Hello, welcome to Eye on Africa here on France 24. I'm Jean-Emile Jameen, bringing you the latest updates from the continent. Coming up, Gabon suspends major social media platforms, including Facebook and TikTok, amidst an anti-government teachers' strike. Authorities cite security and false information, sparking outrage from opposition and citizens who call it a harsh blow to free expression and the economy. Then can Brent Bozell, Trump's controversial pick for US ambassador, mend US-South Africa ties? The conservative commentator has arrived in the country amidst disputes over Israel, Afrikaner refugees and trade. He's vowed to defend American interests while navigating Pretoria's tense geopolitical stance. We'll get more with France 24's Eunice Masson. And we head to the Sambodrome, where Rio Carnival comes to a dazzling close. Samba, salsa and merengue light up the night with vibrant floats and rhythmic dances celebrating African roots in a pulsating festival of culture and joy. Welcome to the news. We start in Gabon, where tensions are rising as social media platforms, including Facebook and TikTok, have been suspended amidst an ongoing teachers' strike. Authorities are blaming online posts for stoking unrest, but critics are calling it a crackdown on freedom of expression. The strike stems from unpaid wages frozen under the decade-long Bongo administration, leaving educators struggling with the cost of living. With protests spreading across public sectors, many have accused the country's young president, Brice Oligui Nguema, of buckling under pressure to meet soaring expectations and restore stability. Indira Ayuk has the story.
Users of social media platforms across Gabon have this Wednesday not been able to access some social media platforms, particularly Facebook and TikTok. This follows a decision which was taken by the country's High Commission for Communication, better known by its French abbreviation as HAC. HAC took the decision. According to them, social media is responsible for cyberbullying, the propagation of fake information, as well as the publication of private information of individuals. The communique went ahead to say that social media has resulted in fueling conflicts within the Central African country for the past couple of years. It should be noted that this decision to suspend social media platforms within the country has affected business persons in particular, who say they have been affected by 50% as they carry out promotions and advertisements on social media and will not be able to function completely without Facebook and TikTok. For the man on the street, the decision doesn't affect them as they are still able to make and receive calls from their loved ones. This decision to suspend social media in Gabon comes at a time when there are calls for persons to be allowed to express their opinions freely, especially in the African sub-region.
Moving on, 4 South African men who were lured into fighting for Russian forces in Ukraine have returned home. That's according to authorities. Their arrival at OR Tambo International Airport follows talks between President Cyril Ramaphosa and Russian President Vladimir Putin on securing the return of citizens caught up in the war. Foreign Minister Ronald Lamola said the men had worked for private security companies in Russia and would be allowed to leave once their contracts were cancelled. Reports in South African media, though, have alleged some recruits were sent for security training by the opposition Umkhonto weSizwe party. That's the one led by former President Jacob Zuma. 11 others are expected back soon as efforts continue to extract those stranded in Ukraine's Donbas region. Now, staying in South Africa, a new chapter is beckoning in its strained relationship with the United States. President Donald Trump's pick for ambassador, conservative media critic Brent Bozell, has arrived in Pretoria to take up his post. Bozell's appointment comes amidst tensions over South Africa's genocide case against Israel at the International Court of Justice, as well as Washington's claims about the treatment of Afrikaners and several trade disputes as well. The new ambassador is expected to present his credentials to President Cyril Ramaphosa in the coming days. Well, we're joined now by France 24's Eunice Masson to tell us more. Eunice, just give our viewers the lowdown on Brent Bozell.
Yeah, I think to start with, a new ambassador can signal a shift in relations between Pretoria and Washington. But in this case, it's still unclear whether this appointment will ease tensions between the countries. So like you've asked, who is this new US ambassador? What we can understand from is that Bozal is quite a well-known conservative figure in the US. He founded the Media Research Center, a media watchdog group, and also created For America, a right-wing political advocacy organization. His views on South Africa actually dates back to apartheid, when he was critical of the ANC being a liberation movement. And Bozal was nominated in March last year. Around the same time, South Africa's ambassador to Washington was expelled. And his posting followed confirmation by the United States Senate in December. So we kind of expected Bozal to arrive in South Africa, despite his arrival in Pretoria, it's not yet known who we will send to the US as a new ambassador at this stage.
That is a long-going dispute since Ibrahim Rasool was basically asked to depart from his post, and that followed a whole furor of contestation with the Trump administration. But now we've got Bozal in the post in South Africa. What is expected from him?
Yeah, so the next step for Bozal is to present his credentials, like you've mentioned, to President Cyril Ramaphosa before officially taking office. No date for this has been confirmed. There have been some local calls from certain groups to reject his credentials, something Ramaphosa could technically do if he wants to, but it's highly unlikely at this stage that he would do that, given the state of the relations between South Africa and the US. And in terms of Bozal's diplomatic goals during his term, he's likely to prioritize advancing the Trump refugee program for white Afrikaners, also strengthening trade and business ties between the countries, and possibly increasing pressure on South Africa to withdraw its genocide case against Israel at the International Court of Justice. And this step, or this priority, could further strain already fragile relations between the countries.
Eunice, you talk about those strained relations, and we've just seen the images of Cyril Ramaphosa there in the Oval Office with Donald Trump. We can all remember that very clearly, and it kind of set the tone for how the administrations have treated each other since then. They are still very much on diplomatic terms, but just talk to me about where we stand with the relationship between the United States and South Africa.
Yeah, I mean, some people describe it as a historic low at the moment, the relationships between the two countries, especially under the President Donald Trump administration. If we look at Washington has cut aid to South Africa and also the broader African continent. It also has boycotted South Africa's G20 summit, which took place last year in Gauteng. It excluded Pretoria from the first round of this year's G20 discussions hosted by the US this year. So the Trump administration continues to promote claims of white genocide in South Africa. We see this narrative being reinforced through its refugee program for white South Africans, and we know that the new ambassador wants to strengthen or want to promote this program. So they strengthen that narrative. Economically, trade between the two countries remains significant but strained. South Africa's growing alignment with the BRICS group, which includes China and Russia, does not sit well with Trump. And on this point, it is critical to remember that just as the US, South Africa is a sovereign country. Neither dictates the other's diplomatic choices. South Africa continues to emphasize multilateral engagement, while Washington has taken a more pressure-driven approach. The key question at this stage now really is whether Ambassador Bozal can help stabilize relations through dialogue grounded in mutual respect.
A very interesting thing to just watch out for, but he still has to get the approval of Cyril Ramaphosa for that. Eunice Masson, as always, thank you so much for coming to us there from South Africa. Let's move on, because officials in Plateau State, Nigeria, say at least 37 miners are dead after a suspected carbon monoxide leak at an informal mining site. The victims, aged between 20 and 35, were working underground when the gas reportedly spread through a pit in Kampani, a community in Wase, early on Wednesday morning. At least another 25 people have been hospitalized. Authorities say most mines in the region operate illegally, often without basic safety standards, raising fresh concerns about dangerous working conditions. Meanwhile, Nigeria's data protection watchdog has launched an investigation into Chinese-owned e-commerce giant Temu over suspected violations of data privacy laws. The Nigeria Data Protection Commission has cited concerns ranging from online surveillance to cross-border data transfers. It's a probe, though, which is set to have deep-reaching effects, targeting one of the country's fastest-growing shopping apps used by millions of Nigerians. Temu says protecting user privacy is a top priority and has pledged cooperation. The move also follows heightened global scrutiny of the platform's rapid expansion. Let's take the story now to South Sudan, and the humanitarian crisis there is rapidly deteriorating, raising fears that the world's youngest nation could slide back into full-scale civil war. Fighting in Jonglei state between forces loyal to President Salva Kiir and his rival Riek Machar has displaced around 280,000 people since December, according to the United Nations. Hospitals are overwhelmed, aid supplies are running out, and hundreds of thousands, many of them children, now face acute hunger. Selina Sykes reports.
In this makeshift camp just outside of Jonglei State, hundreds of people have found refuge. They may have escaped the escalating violence, but there's one thing they can't escape wherever they go.
We fled from our land in Jonglei because of the clashes between government forces and rebels. Everyone vulnerable died, and we came here, but now hunger is our biggest threat.
280,000 people have been displaced in South Sudan since December. According to UNICEF, around 825,000 children are at risk of acute malnutrition, a warning that is very much on the mind of mother of 5, Akir. She lost her husband in the conflict and now fears for the life of her newborn baby.
There is no milk here. We don't have food. We're all hungry.
Many mothers in the camp spend their days foraging for wild fruit and nuts as they wait for aid deliveries. Humanitarian operations in South Sudan have been crippled by attacks and looting. Earlier this month, the UN's World Food Programme suspended its activities in one county in Upper Nile State following attacks on a humanitarian convoy. Many camps also have minimal water, sanitation and health services, drastically increasing the risk of disease outbreaks. This as hospitals are struggling to treat an influx of casualties with rapidly dwindling medical supplies.
We move from devastation to celebration. Rio Carnival closed in dazzling style at the Marquês de Sapucaí Sambodrome as the Paraíso de Tuiuchi Samba School. Wild revelers with vibrant floats, music and dance. Their performance celebrated African heritage alongside Brazilian and Caribbean influences, blending samba, salsa and merengue. Participants called it an emotional living history, a cultural treasure connecting Brazil to its African roots, preserving stories and rhythms often absent from textbooks. Clarisse Fortuné has all the splendor on show.
On the runway of the Sambadrome Marquês de Sapucaí, dancers from Paraíso do Tuiuti set the final night of parades. Their performance traces the spiritual journey of the Ifa tradition, born in West Africa, carried across the Caribbean, and ultimately flourishing in Brazil. It's both a historical and symbolic voyage through elaborate costumes, percussion, and choreography. Performers bring to life the deep influence of African civilizations on Afro-Brazilian identity. The show blends samba, salsa, and merengue, a fusion that stirs powerful emotion among participants and spectators alike.
It's an overwhelming feeling of happiness and joy. My eyes were already teary. I even cried, a tear running down during rehearsal. Imagine today, on the day itself, right?
The night culminates in fierce competition. Each school is judged on costumes, floats, harmony, and percussion. But beyond the scores, Carnival remains above all a shared cultural moment, uniting music and history.
The carnival tells the history that we don't learn in school, and this theme is worth it. For example, you won't learn this in a school textbook.
Blending African heritage and artistic creativity, Rio's Carnival once again proves why it remains one of the most iconic cultural shows in the world.
Absolutely brilliant images there. That's all the African news for now. There's more coming up on France 24.